Pieces of My Heart audiobook. Introduction. A mother's journey. I never planned for my life to unfold this way. I never imagined raising children alone, carrying the weight of love and responsibility without a partner by my side. I never thought I would have to be both mother and father, protector and nurturer, provider and comforter, warrior and healer. But life doesn't ask for our permission. It doesn't give us time to prepare. It simply happens unexpectedly, unfiltered, unapologetic. And in those moments, we have two choices: break under the pressure or rise above it. I chose to rise, not because it was easy, not because I had all the answers, not because I was fearless. I rose because I had no other choice, because my children needed me to, because if I didn't fight for them, who would? This is not a story of regret. It is not a tale of heartbreak or misfortune. It is a story of resilience, of sacrifice, of love that never wavered, even in the face of abandonment. It is the story of a woman who refused to be a victim of her circumstances, who refused to let society's judgment define her, who refused to let her children grow up believing they were less because of what they didn't have, because they were never lacking. They had a mother who gave them everything she had. And that was more than enough. People love to judge single mothers. They whisper about our choices, assuming they know our stories. They reduce us to stereotypes, thinking we are weak, broken, or irresponsible. They pity us as if we are missing something. But they don't see the truth. They don't see the nights I stayed up, holding a sick child, praying for the strength to keep going. They don't see the sacrifices, the meals I skipped, the clothes I wore until they were threadbare, so my children never went without. They don't see the love that fills our home, the laughter that echoes through our walls, the strength that runs through my children's veins, because they have watched their mother fight for them. I am not weak. I am not broken. I am not a woman to be pitied. I am a warrior. And this is my story. I wrote this book because too many women feel alone in this journey. Because too many single mothers believe they are failing, not realizing they are moving mountains every single day. Because too many children grow up wondering if they were ever enough for the fathers who left. And I want them to know, you are enough. You have always been enough. Your worth is not defined by who stayed or who walked away. The absence of a father does not measure your value, but by the presence of love. This book is for the women who get up every morning, exhausted but determined. For the mothers who hold their families together with love, sacrifice, and sheer willpower. For the children who grew up without a father but never without love. This is our story. A story of survival, a story of triumph, a story of a mother who refused to give up. Because no matter how hard life got, I stayed. And that made all the difference. No one tells you how heavy love can be. Not the soft, easy kind of love, the kind that comes without struggle, without sacrifice, but the kind of love that keeps you awake at night, worrying about how you'll make ends meet. The kind of love that forces you to be stronger than you ever thought possible. The kind of love that makes you put your dreams, your own needs, and your pain aside, because someone else's life depends on you. That's the kind of love I carried, and it was heavy, but I never put it down, because no matter how tired I was, how overwhelmed, how lost I sometimes felt, I was a mother first, and that meant I had no choice but to keep going. There were nights when the questions haunted me. Did I do enough? Could I have chosen better? Would my children hate me for the life they were born into? I worried about the absence of a father figure. I worried about the struggles I couldn't protect them from. I worried about whether love alone was enough to fill the gaps left behind. But then I would look at my children. I would see the way they smiled despite everything. I would hear their laughter, feel their hugs, and watch them grow into people who were kind, resilient, and full of love. And in those moments, I knew I was enough. I was always enough. People see single mothers and assume we are weak. They think we are broken, struggling, desperate. They think we are missing something. But they don't see the truth. They don't see the power it takes to do this alone. To wake up every morning and fight for your family. To sacrifice so your children never feel like they are lacking. To hold your head high even when the world tries to make you feel ashamed. They don't see the quiet victories, the moments of love, of laughter, of triumph in a home built by a mother's hands. They don't see the resilience, the courage, the unbreakable spirit that lives within us. Because if they did, they would know we are not weak. We are warriors. Rewriting the narrative. For too long, the world has told a story about women like me. A story of failure, a story of shame, a story that says single mothers are less than, are broken, are not enough. But that story is a lie. Because what the world doesn't understand is this. Single mothers are some of the strongest women alive. We do what most people would crumble under. We love fiercely, sacrifice endlessly, and keep going even when everything is against us. We are not the story they tell about us. We are a new story, a story of triumph, a story of resilience, a story of love so powerful that it builds futures, breaks cycles, and raises kings and queens. And that is a story worth telling. A message to every mother walking this path. If you are a mother reading this, if you have ever felt the weight of doing this alone, of being judged, of wondering if you are enough, let me tell you something. You are extraordinary. You are doing what people call impossible. You are shaping the future with your love. You are proving every single day that you do not need to be saved, because you are your hero. Your struggles do not define you. Your past does not define you. Your mistakes do not define you. What defines you is your love. And as long as you love your children, as long as you keep fighting for them, as long as you show up, you are winning. So hold your head high, because you are not just surviving, you are thriving. This book is for us. This book is for the mothers who stayed when others walked away. For the women who built homes out of love, even when money was tight. For the children who grew up knowing that they were never fatherless, because they had a mother who was everything. This book is for the warriors, for the protectors, for the women who refused to give up. And most of all, this book is for me, for the woman I was, for the woman I became, for the mother who gave everything and in return built a family that was whole, strong, and full of love. Because at the end of the day, my story is not one of sadness. It is a story of victory. And now, it's time to begin. Let's rewrite the narrative together. Chapter 1. A girl with big dreams. I never imagined my life would turn out this way. Growing up, I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to be successful, independent, and most of all, happy. But life has a way of twisting your path in directions you never planned. I was raised in a world where love seemed like the answer to everything. I watched my mother struggle, doing her best to provide, and I swore that I would never walk the same road. I told myself that I would be different, that I would find real love, build a stable home, and live a life free from the struggles I saw around me. But fate had other plans. I was young, naive, and full of hope. Love felt like a fairy tale back then, something magical and all-consuming. The first time I fell hard. He promised me the world and whispered sweet words that made me believe I was special. And I believed him. I believed in us. Until that day, I realized love alone was not enough. When I found out I was pregnant, reality hit like a crashing wave. I was still a child myself, barely able to take care of my own needs, let alone a baby's. Fear gripped me, but so did determination. I was going to make it work. I was going to be the best mother. I could be, even if I wasn't sure what that meant yet. I told him about the baby, hoping he'd be as excited as I was scared. But excitement never came. His face turned pale, his promises started to fade, and the weight of responsibility was too much for him. "I'm not ready for this," he said. Neither was I, but ready or not, life was happening. The months that followed were a mix of loneliness and anticipation. I felt the first kicks, experienced sleepless nights, and prepared for a future I hadn't planned for. My body changed, my emotions ran wild, and I learned the first lesson of motherhood. Love is unconditional, but people are not. I gave birth to my first child, a beautiful baby who instantly became my world. Holding that tiny life in my arms, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. This baby depended on me. It was up to me to make sure they were loved, protected, and cared for. But as I stared into those innocent eyes, I also felt the weight of something else, something I hadn't yet figured out. This was just the beginning. And I had no idea how much more was coming. The days after giving birth were a whirlwind of emotions. Exhaustion mixed with overwhelming love. Fear tangled with joy. I was a mother now, a title that came with no instruction manual, just instinct and trial and error. At night, I'd watch my baby sleep, tracing tiny fingers and listening to soft breaths. In those quiet moments, I'd make silent promises. I will protect you. I will never let you feel unloved. I will give you the life I never had. But reality didn't wait for me to settle into motherhood. Bills didn't stop piling up just because I had a newborn. My body was still healing, my mind was still adjusting, and yet life demanded that I keep moving. The father of my child disappeared into the background, fading like a shadow at dusk. At first, he made excuses. He was busy, he needed time, he wasn't sure how to be a father. Then the calls stopped. The texts went unanswered. Eventually, I stopped expecting him to show up. I cried some nights, not just for me but for my child, who would grow up never knowing the man whose features they carried. I asked myself over and over, how did I let this happen? How did I end up alone? But alone didn't mean broken. I wiped my tears, held my baby close, and reminded myself, I am still strong, I am still worthy, and I will find a way. A world that doesn't understand motherhood changed everything. My priorities, my friendships, the way the world saw me. Suddenly, I was no longer just a young woman with dreams. I was a single mom, a label that came with whispers, judgments, and unsolicited advice. She ruined her life. She should have been more careful. She'll never find a good man now. The words stung even when I pretended they didn't. Society had a way of making single mothers feel like failures, like we had done something wrong by bringing life into the world without a man by our side. But what about the men who left? Why weren't they judged the same way? I refused to let their opinions define me. I got up every morning, fed and bathed my baby, and worked as hard as I could to build a future. I took on whatever jobs I could find, waitressing, cleaning, and even babysitting for other mothers who needed help. Some days I felt like I was drowning. Some days I questioned whether I was enough. But every night when I looked into my child's eyes, I knew I had no choice but to keep going. Dreams that wouldn't die, being a mother didn't erase my dreams, just made them more complicated. I still wanted more for myself, for my child. I still wanted to prove that I could be something beyond just another statistic. I didn't know how yet. I didn't have all the answers. But what I did have was a fire that refused to burn out. And even though life had already taken me down a path I never expected, I had a feeling this was just the beginning of my story. Because one thing was certain, I was far from done. The first year of motherhood was the hardest. The sleepless nights, the long days of work, and the constant fear that I wasn't doing enough. It all weighed on me. I had always imagined parenting as a partnership, two people sharing the responsibilities of raising a child. Instead, I carried it alone. Some days I felt like a superhero, juggling work and motherhood like it was second nature. Other days, I collapsed onto my bed the moment my baby fell asleep, wondering how I would do it all over again tomorrow. I envied the women who had help, the ones who had partners, family, or even just friends they could lean on. My support system was small, but I was grateful for those who stayed. My mother helped when she could, though she had already done her fair share of raising children. A few friends checked in from time to time, but most of them drifted away, their lives moving forward while mine revolved around diapers and late-night feedings. I learned quickly that motherhood was a lonely road, especially when you walked it alone. There were moments when I thought about giving up, not on my child, but on myself. I thought about dropping out of school. I thought about settling for whatever low-paying job would pay the bills. I thought about accepting that my dreams were too far gone. But every time I looked at my baby, I knew I had to push through. I had to be strong, not just for me, but for the little life depending on me. I stopped worrying about what other people thought. The judgment, the whispers, it no longer mattered. I realized that the only opinion that truly counted was the one staring back at me in the mirror. I was the only one who could define my worth. So I worked harder. I found ways to balance my responsibilities, stretching myself thin but never breaking. I went to work, I took classes, I read books on parenting, and I made sure my child never felt the weight of my struggles. And through it all, I reminded myself, this is not the end of my story. As the months passed, I started to feel a small glimmer of hope. Maybe I could still achieve my dreams. Maybe I could build a life that was more than just survival. Maybe love would find me again, real love, the kind that didn't fade when things got hard. But deep down, I also knew that life wasn't done testing me yet. Because while I had learned to stand on my own, the road ahead was still filled with choices. Some that would bring me joy, and others that would bring more heartache. And I had no idea that soon I would be forced to make decisions that would change everything once again. I never understood what true sacrifice meant until I became a mother. The moment I held my baby in my arms, my life was no longer just my own. Every decision I made from that day forward had to be for them, for their survival, their happiness, their future. My dreams, my desires, and even my exhaustion came second. There were nights when my body begged for rest, but my baby's cries forced me awake. There were days when I barely ate because every dollar had to stretch for diapers and formula. There were moments when I stood in the mirror, staring at the tired eyes of a girl I barely recognized, wondering if she'd ever feel beautiful again. Motherhood had changed me in ways I never imagined. I learned to function on broken sleep, to smile even when I was falling apart, and to give every ounce of myself without hesitation. I learned how to be strong when I felt weak. I learned how to love even when love hadn't always been kind to me. But what no one prepared me for was the silence. The nights when the baby finally fell asleep, when the world slowed down and I was left alone with my thoughts. Did I ruin my life? Will I ever find love again? Am I doing this right? Doubt was always there, lurking in the corners of my mind. But every time I held my baby close, I reminded myself, this love is worth it. This journey is worth it, and I will make it. The hardest part about being a young single mother wasn't just the exhaustion or the financial struggles. It was the way the world saw me. I could feel the stares whenever I walked into a grocery store, balancing a baby on my hip while counting my change. I heard the judgment in people's voices when they asked, "Where's the father?" As if my worth as a mother depended on a man's presence. I wanted to scream, "Does it matter? He's not here." But I am, and I am enough. But the world didn't see it that way. To them, I was another girl who made bad choices. Another statistic. Another example of what not to become. I had to fight twice as hard to prove I was more than that. I went back to school, even when exhaustion made my eyes burn. I worked late shifts, even when my body ached from the weight of the day. I refused to let the whispers define me, even when they cut deep. I had dreams, and they weren't dead yet. I just had to find a new way to chase them. Months passed, and just as I was learning to navigate motherhood alone, the unexpected happened. He came back. The man who had disappeared when I needed him most, the one who left me to figure out this life on my own. He reappeared with apologies, excuses, with words that once would have melted my heart. I wasn't ready. I was scared. I want to be here now. A part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted my child to have a father. I wanted to have a family. I wanted the fairy tale I had imagined before reality hit. But trust was a fragile thing, and love, real love, was more than just words. I watched him hold our baby, and I wondered, could he stay this time? Could he love us the way we deserved? Or was I setting myself up for heartbreak all over again? Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It forces you to make choices, to take risks, to step into the unknown even when fear grips your chest. I had a decision to make. Do I let him back in, hoping he has changed? Or do I protect myself and my child from another heartbreak? I wanted so badly to believe in second chances, but deep down I knew some people never change. And this time I had more than just my heart to protect. The sight of him holding our baby stirred something deep inside me. Nostalgia, longing, and the ache of what could have been. He smiled like he belonged there, as if he had never left. As if the months of absence had never happened. For a brief moment, I let myself imagine it. What if he meant it this time? What if he had changed? What if we could be a family after all? But then reality came crashing in. Where had he been during those sleepless nights when I rocked our child back to sleep? Where was he when I had to choose between buying diapers or paying the light bill? Where was he when I broke down crying, exhausted and overwhelmed, wishing someone, anyone, would help me? Now that the hardest part was over, he wanted to return. Now that the baby was smiling, now that the worst of the newborn nights had passed, he wanted to be a father. I stared at him, my heart battling my mind. I wanted him to be different, but life had already taught me a painful lesson. Wanting something to be true doesn't make it real. I had to think beyond myself. It wasn't just about whether I still had feelings for him. It was about the little life depending on me. A child deserves stability, love, and a parent who wouldn't walk away when things get tough. I wasn't sure if he could be that person. So I asked the question that had haunted me since the day he left. Why now? He hesitated, shifting uncomfortably under my gaze. I was scared before, but I'm ready now. Scared. I had been scared too, terrified, but I had stayed. I faced my fears and pushed through them because that's what being a parent meant. I let out a slow breath and shook my head. I can't afford to trust words. If you really mean it, prove it. Show up, be consistent. Because if you leave again, I won't let you come back. His eyes flickered with something. Regret, maybe. I couldn't be sure. But I knew this. I would never beg a man to stay. For the first time, I realized that love, real love, wasn't about empty promises or hoping someone would change. It was about action. It was about showing up every single day, no matter how hard things got. And if he wasn't capable of that, then my child and I would be better off without him. It hurt to let go of the dream. It hurt to admit that the fairy tale I had once believed in would never come true. But I had something better than a fantasy. I had a purpose. I had a reason to keep going. And no matter what, I was going to make sure my child had the best life possible, even if that meant doing it alone. Because I wasn't just a girl with big dreams anymore. I was a mother, and that was the most powerful thing I could ever be.